Welcome to Overwatch. This time we're going to be talking about Alive and why I like it so much. Before I begin, I'll say that this video is going to be a lot of Alive footage shown over and over again and maybe a little bit of recall thrown in for a little bit of fun. Now, I loved this animated short and I loved it for many reasons, but let's begin, well, at the beginning. So to understand why this is such a fine piece of work, you need to understand the drive behind the animated shorts. And that's that they're not looking to tell like an overarching story or a big cohesive narrative. They're just there to give you flashpoints into, what's happening in this world, explain to you a few things about the world, and each one has a kind of a purpose and a drive behind it. They're meant to flesh out the world that Overwatch is set in and give you insight into that and the characters involved. Recall, for example, was built to set the scene, so it tells you what Overwatch is, a disbanded network of heroes, and it tells you that it was disbanded and informs you about Winston as a character. It also highlights Talon as the bad guys, Reaper as a very bad guy, and Reaper getting the location of Overwatch agents being a very bad thing. Scene setting, light information on the characters, so on. What Alive does is different. Alive is a self-contained story that gives you a lot of hints to the character of the two main figures, Widowmaker and Tracer, as well as a heavy-handed introduction to the themes of the meta-narrative around Overwatch. With that said, we'll start with the in-world story before taking a look at what makes Alive really work from a design and I don't know, I want to use the word cinematography, but I don't think I'm qualified enough to use the term, so I'll just say design perspective. Timeline-wise, this is set before the events of the game, of course, but soon after the events of Recall, very soon after from what we know. Britain as a nation has been struggling with the Omnic question. How do you integrate a group of sentient machines into your country? Things are tense to say the least, especially around King's Row, which is basically a slum in London, which the Omnics live in a large number, mostly underground. By law, I believe it's true that they're basically second-class citizens. Discrimination is perfectly legal against them, and this can be seen by various signs and posters around King's Row, specifically in the actual game map. I'll try and show you a few of those on the screen. Mondata, the leader of the original Omnics that began to truly question their own nature, is scheduled to speak and ease tension to promote integration. Mondata and his monks basically awoke to self-awareness and then secluded themselves away. I've heard people question, why are there robot monks? But to me it makes perfect sense. If you know you were built for a purpose, but you transcend that purpose, it'll make you start to ask big questions about your place and your role in the universe and how it all fits together and does what matters, what doesn't matter, that kind of thing. That gives birth to a kind of spirituality, that the sum is greater than the machine parts that make it up. And it also makes sense of why there's no backing up of an Omnic's personality. There's no save file with Mondata on it. Mondata.exe is not on someone's flash drive. For argument's sake, it could simply be that the technology used to make an Omnic work, it prevents storing an Omnic's personal data, for example neural networks would prevent that kind of thing, or it could just be a massive taboo, like if you've played Soma you know that the feeling that someone could make a copy of your brain that's identical of you is very uncomfortable. Still, the short does a good job of showing that Mondata is important, people fuss over him, people seem to respect him, and everyone's listening to him, and he's got more head pips and more lights on his face than everyone else does. He's an important guy. Which is why it's important that he dies, for Talon at least, who would thrive in the resulting chaos. The specific agenda we don't know, and we don't really need to know it regardless. It's just framing that Mondata is important and peaceful, and Widowmaker is an efficient and capable assassin. Having a win in the short is very important, by the way, and Reaper kind of needs a victory as well because he's becoming a little bit of a jobber. And Tracer is naive and optimistic and heroic, and these are the important things to convey throughout this short. Other than that, the story beats play out nice and simple. Tracer wants to go and see the speech, notices something is up, gets herself involved, gets repeatedly outsmarted and outplayed by Widowmaker, again playing to that naive trait and also the prepared trait that Widowmaker has, and then failing in her mission. Meanwhile, Widowmaker is prepared, efficient, and task-focused. Every spare moment she's going back and trying to kill either guards that are in her way, Tracer and getting rid of Tracer, or trying to kill Mondata, and everything she does is driving around that kill Mondata, kill Mondata, kill Mondata. That's all she cares about. Every free moment she has, she's looking for that kill shot. So while Tracer is quippy and almost playful, Widowmaker's only slip is a single line before she basically executes or tries to execute Tracer.
Sweet, foolish girl.
The final moment I'll focus on story-wise is the ending. I've heard a lot of people complain about the dialogue, that Tracer just asks, why? And some people saw that as, I don't know, childish or simplistic writing. I throw it up as an example of her character. It plays to what Tracer is. Tracer is, above all things, and I said this back in November 2014, the naive, young, optimistic, hopeful character. She is full of, dare I say it, yes I do, I love the fact that this has become vocabulary, spunk and hope. She's absolutely loaded with spunk and hope. And she literally cannot process why someone would kill Mondata. It just goes through her fuzzy little brain and a big error 404 bubbles up. She doesn't understand it. It was almost fun chasing Widowmaker around London and trying to fight her on the rooftops, but it was only really fun for Tracer. Everyone else was getting freaking beaten up and murdered. And it's like she doesn't realise that no, Widowmaker is here to actually kill this guy. All Widowmaker gives a shit about, doesn't give a shit about the quips, the light-hearted banter. She doesn't care about any of that. She just wants to put her shiny bullet in that Omnic's shiny forehead. And so when
Looks like the party is over.
Tracer just can't process it. And Widow doesn't give a fuck. Remember that Widowmaker is, well, soulless. People sometimes ask me, why do you like Widowmaker? Because she's evil and she's got no heart to her. I've always liked Widowmaker, not just because she's a hot blue woman in a skin-tight outfit with one of the most insane badonkadonks in gaming. No, that helps, but, well, I like villains. I really like villains, and the evil sorceress trope is a weakness I'll never ever get past. Evil assassin is a close second. Widow is compounded because I find her story has so much potential for shaping and influencing someone like Tracer's. Widowmaker has a tragic background, but her origin is literally noted as Gerard Lacroix's wife, and I'll pronounce Lacroix in the English way to save myself from embarrassment. She has no official ties to Overwatch and no working for them. She could have just been a loving housewife until she gets kidnapped to get to Gerard, brainwashed, rescued, and then she murders him before returning to Talon. And then she becomes the greatest assassin in the world at the cost of her soul. And when most people hear that story, they think of sort of redemption arcs, she can be saved, she can be fixed. Like, she's something to rescue and repair, almost. But personally, in my experience as someone who occasionally does DMing and, Dungeon Master stuff for D&D and the like, and I like writing villains, I would completely play it the opposite direction. Widowmaker could be freed, yes, she could be fixed, the brainwashing could be undone, but even a free-thinking Widowmaker might still be grateful to Talon. Before she was nobody, and now she influences the world on a scale that she never could before. So you introduce a character like Tracer, naive, innocent, cuddly, fluffy, to something like Widowmaker, unrepentant, clinical, focused, and you get a massive clash of ideals. And for all the work that Tracer could do to try and save her, well, Widow just might not want to be saved, just like in this short. Widow just doesn't give a shit. Infinitely more interesting, in my opinion, than Redemption. Maybe. That's just how I feel on that kind of thing. And actually, I'll finish off on this final section by saying that only Tracer would even bother asking why. This is what makes Tracer special as a character, and it plays to Tracer's characteristics. You think Reinhardt, if he was stood on that rooftop somehow, would ask? No, he'd just start swinging his hammer. Soldier 76 would already be firing, like he would not have zero hesitation in trying to put Widow down. He wouldn't be exchanging dialogue with Widowmaker. Only Tracer, and maybe Winston, would even bother doing that. And finally, just to finish up on the really story-focused part, and going on to design, I'll also touch on the fascination that Tumblr and its spawn has with shipping. No, Widowmaker does not give a shit about Tracer romantically. Canonically, she's dead inside. Yes, Widowmaker might have met Tracer once or twice before her capture, but as far as we know, Amelie was just a normal woman and not an Overwatch agent. She was also married and, given the benefit of the doubt, faithful to Gerard. No quiet lezzing out with Tracer in the background. I know for the overwhelming majority this stuff is kind of a no-brainer, but yeesh, some parts of the internet really get scarily obsessed with this kind of thing. The line adieu chérie is simply a rebuttal to Tracer's use of love. It literally means basically bye sweetheart or bye darling, for example. And the sweet fool of a girl line just mocks her naivete and her sort of fluffy bunniness in just chasing Widowmaker like a puppy, basically. It also plays into Widowmaker's role of being the confident woman, in contrast to Tracer's young girl. Hell, Widow even calls Diva out on that kind of thing, saying that this is no place for children. Confident, mature, focused against the young, willful, and naive, again playing into the themes of the characters. And people wonder why I like her. That and the cold disdain for all people. As a nerd, I've learned to appreciate some good cold disdain. So let's talk design. First, a lot of good use of grounding. King's Row is laid out pretty much exactly how it is in the game, only minor changes to some of the walls and such, and the lack of, well, a memorial statue for a murder that, is just taking place. It would be kind of weird if it's there. Major use of blue-orange contrast all over in terms of color schemes helps make Tracer pop, puts her in constant warm colors, for example, so you know that she's the happy, caring person, she's the good guy, you want to root for her. Meanwhile, Widowmaker is in blue, purple, that kind of thing. Only the red gives her the big contrast and helps sort of mesh her with the Talon ship at the end as well. Just gives you like a unifying theme for the technology there. I'll also touch on the use of the mingled crowd. The amount of faux mockery this girl has got for being clanged, for example, is in its own way kind of dryly amusing. But hey, it's meant to show that relationships between Omnics and people happen. This chick clearly digs her shiny friend, and I can't help but think that, you know, if it's a dude with an obviously female robot, it'd be a few notches up the creepy ladder, but that's just me being an observation on the internet. You do you, blonde girl. Besides, like I said, it's an establishing shot of a mingled crowd, kind of a hey, we can all get along kind of thing. Or maybe, Widowmaker gets shown as being unrealistically competent. Why bother just shooting out a window like a normal person when you can shoot hanging from a building upside down? Nice use of the visor though, really good touch in giving her peripheral vision. Other than that, we just get a showcase of these guys in lore where, you know, balance goes out the window. Tracer with infinite blinks, Widow making a position where she likes, Widow kicking Tracer in the face. Let's see that again, by the way. Yeah, just once more. One more time. You'd think this will get old. Slow motion. MLG style. Nope, still not old. Carrying on then. Again, Widow, focused, prepared. Tracer almost having fun. Playing into the characters. And then you have this rooftop chase and the guard beating up section, which is just a fantastic use of camera work. Let me be frank, I've seen many CGI action sequences. Frankly, at this point, I'm getting a little bit bored of them. They're very easy to get wrong and very easy to make kind of almost nauseating to watch. How could something look impressive after all when it's just all fake and it's just someone sat on their ass animating something? The answer is good camera work and good direction. It keeps you engaged and sets up fantastic shot after fantastic shot like this one with Widowmaker in the air. This will be a recurring theme because it'll give you memorable moments, things that you'll think about when you think about this short. Stuff like the shot in front of this clock, for example. It sets it in London because it's Big Ben, but it's a distinct sci-fi thing. Blue-orange contrast out the arse, and again, Widow outplaying Tracer also sets up the nice recall shot a little bit later. And then, hey, Tracer actually gets the upper hand, leading to a wonderfully shot sequence. Also, to the one nerd out there I saw raging that the bullet still had its casing, no dumbass, the indentation there is where the casing was. Dipping back to the story, because we can all appreciate how clever the camera work is for establishing the three people involved in this scene, Mondata, Tracer and Widow, and how they're all aligned and positioned respective to one another, as well as the fact that we've already demonstrated that the rewind ability is a thing so the viewer knows what's about to happen almost as certainly as Widowmaker does. We can all appreciate that, right? But the final narrative touch, I love that, well, again, naive jumping into things Tracer would have taken that bullet 10 times out of 10 if she knew where she was. But she didn't. And it's why the ending is so crushing and so good. It's a clever setup to a clever end. Widowmaker's job is done, and she can take all the time in the world now to be smug. She could have been shooting, but she's not there to kill Tracer. She's there to kill Mondata. Cold, clinical, professional. She then goes on to break the chronal accelerator, so hey, she can't actually use the rewind ability, and Tracer has to give up the chase. Reaper would have finished the job. He would have started shooting down there on a twitching body, but Widowmaker isn't Reaper. She went there with an order, kill Mondata, and then job's done, return home. She's a brainwashed weapon and acts like it. It all links in and works. Final thing I'll touch on, the one moment I really didn't like was, well, this scene. Little bit too on the nose. The whole slow-mo nose scream kind of died with Star Wars Episode 3 and it never really comes across well. We know Mondata's death is a bad thing and we know it's permanent, or it can be shown by having the crowd panic, it could be shown by having people fuss over it, anything but that. It just comes across as being comical rather than tragic. Next up, there's a fan edit out there where Widowmaker speaks French in her intro and outro monologues, and it's absolutely amazing. Same voice actress does both, go figure. Widowmaker in-game spends half the time speaking French, and is absolutely superb. Heard some people complain about her accent, but I've also heard from some French people that she sounds like she's from Western France specifically. I wouldn't know French regional dialects. I do know that Widowmaker is from Annecy, and Annecy is actually near Geneva, it's near Switzerland I think. But the accent sounds fine to me, and any strong accent can kind of come across as a bit weird regardless. Still, using native languages and subtitles is a powerful tool and would really help add to that air of mystery to someone like Widowmaker. And very much finally, hats off to the sound guys, like just listen to this sequence. The music is superb and it ramps up the tension insanely. All the guns have a big heavy bass to them, everything has a weight to it. You've got to remember that every scene is basically built from the ground up, so hats off to the sound guys especially for making it all feel very visceral and real. And well, that's why I like Alive so much. It's a superbly crafted little piece of work and works in-game and out of game with characters using basically their entire moveset and just nails it. For a free product that goes alongside the game, it's mind-bogglingly good. It's just a level of quality you wouldn't expect. That being said, Blizzard, if you could upload full quality versions of these onto the damn press site for download, that would be great. Thanks for watching to the end. I've been Josh as a babbling fanboy and as one voice amongst many. I hope you appreciate what I see in Widow and her evil, cold, dead inside ways. Toodles.